Hello, everybody, and welcome to Monday, another week, March already. What I'm going to be talking about here is the prediction I made for Turkey and lots of interesting information about the earthquake, Turkey, geopolitics, my predictions, and how that all ties in. So this is basically prediction, discussion about Turkey, reference, Ukraine, earthquake, etc. So lots of interesting stuff coming up. What I've got on the screen there is just an excerpt from my book to give you an example of some of the predictions I made for Turkey. Before I start, did a show last week with Andrew. I've uploaded to BitChute, and I'll put the link in the comments. You don't have to be a member of BitChute. Just click the link. God, what do I sound like today? You click the link, you go right there, and then you can just watch that. Okay, so the Turkish earthquake. Now, I don't want to be too conspiratorial, so I'm not saying this is what I definitely believe happened. You make up your own mind, and I'm going to lay out the information. So what we are wondering is, let's first look at this very interesting article here. I will link to it so you can read it yourself as well. It says the head of the Turkish Space Agency spoke about the earthquake causing weapon. So there is a weapon that can provide earthquakes. This was stated by the head of the Turkish Space Agency, Serdar Hüseyin Yıldırım. According to him, there's no protection against such weapons. He said that seismic activity is due to rods made of titanium alloy. They are placed in a satellite and then a shot is fired from space towards the Earth. This happens very quickly and provokes an earthquake of magnitude 7 to 8, and as a result of the strike, everything that is in the fall zone will be destroyed. And this is what the guy, he is the head of the Turkish Space Agency, so he's not just like any Joe Soap in Turkey mouthing off. That is what he's saying. Now, I, of course, don't have any idea if these exist, but as you know, a devastating earthquake hit Turkey on February the 6th, and there was a lot of kind of anomalies about it. Let's go back here. As you can see, these were my predictions for Turkey. I said that, okay, I'll come back to some of those because they're all quite relevant actually. I said coup or assassination attempt on Erdogan, earthquake or avalanche, and I mentioned extreme weather. All right. Now, and then I mentioned some other things which we will come back to. Now, when I looked back in previous years that were similar astrologically, Turkey had had many earthquakes. I must note, however, that this earthquake that happened on February the 6th happened in the south east of the country, which is not typically an area where earthquakes happen. Now, a lot of people said, well, the building regulations are really terrible in places like Turkey and Egypt. These buildings are very poorly constructed. That's why they folded like a house of cards. Yes, but no one was really expecting an earthquake in those zones. So bad, kind of building regulations aside. All right, it was a 7.8 magnitude earthquake. The epicenter was 30 kilometers from a major city of 2.1 million people. And apparently the epicenter was 18 kilometers deep. And there were very strong aftershocks. And who knows? Why did this suddenly happen? Now, I also believed it might have had something to do with the Israeli attack on Iftisatan sorry if I've said that wrong, in Iran on a possible nuclear weapons manufacturing site, or at least an armament site. I wondered if this might have triggered the earthquake. You know, because I mentioned it on here that was my thinking. Now, for people who say, oh, well, this is conspiracy, they don't cause earthquakes. In the former Soviet Union, the USSR, they actually had something called a military seismology department. And artificial earthquakes actually happen all the time. Admittedly, some of them are quite small, but they've been created in California. And the UN even has a convention that bans seismology weapons. So why have a convention banning them if they don't exist or they couldn't be, created? The normal fault lines are in Anatolia. They're not in the southeast, in the area of the country with this devastating magnitude earthquake struck, are they? And there's been an absolute media assault on Erdogan. Oh, it's his fault, and there's an election coming up in May. So this is very, very convenient, because when there's an earthquake or a natural disaster, the incumbent tends to do very badly, typically in all countries when these sort of things happen. Very interesting that the 10 districts affected by this earthquake, 7 of them, of the 10, 7 of them of strongholds of Erdogan. So imagine like a major disaster in the United Kingdom, and it's a stronghold of, say, the Tories. Say a major disaster happens in Surrey and it's affecting, lots of seats and constituencies. Obviously, it's going to be much harder for elections to be held effectively, and due to the Turkish constitution, they can only delay an election for a month. So we've got to get all those areas where Erdogan's expected to do very well have been devastated, and they've got to get their kind of voting systems going for May. I mean, this could severely affect voting in those areas and affect his prospects, okay? So a lot of people, you remember that very, very well. I hardly remember it either, but in 1988, there was a very big earthquake in Armenia, and at that time, a lot of people also thought that was suspect, that particular earthquake. So one of the things they can do, now this also applies to New Zealand, who have also had the serious earthquake, which is a lot more serious than the press is saying, and a cyclone. Apparently, heating up the ionosphere messes with the magnetic field, and it can cause earthquakes as well as cyclones. Isn't it odd that New Zealand suffered a terrible earthquake and a cyclone in the kind of Napier area, and there's a big cover-up with not much news getting out, but people on the ground, according to David Icke, saying it's very, very severe. I talked about that more on my show with Andrew. Okay. So this weather control has been going on all the time, and what people thought was weird is not a lot of people were actually in the alternate sphere even talking about this being a fake or an orchestrated earthquake. But on Google, the search engine was full of stories debunking. So they'd kind of preempted any discussion of anyone about this being a fake earthquake or a kind of manipulated earthquake by getting all these debunking stories ready to go, and Erdogan kind of hinted that's what he thinks has happened. Okay, yes, fracking, as you know, also can cause earthquakes, but I don't think it's that was the case here. But it just shows loads of things can cause it. It's not like they don't know how to cause it. Now, there's a particular hatred of Erdogan in the Western media at the moment, and also in the Middle East press as well. And now Erdogan is on the religious nationalist side, whereas the military, who've mainly been trained by NATO, Turkey has the biggest military, the second biggest military in NATO, so the biggest military next to the US. A lot of the military's been trained by NATO. They are much more pro-secular, very progressive, liberal, all right? So the army is diametrically opposed to the philosophy of Erdogan, which is more nationalist, populist, I suppose, and religious, whereas the army is more secular, progressive, neoliberal kind of thing. A lot of the West is saying, oh, it's because of Erdogan's crony capitalism that all these buildings were built so poorly. Those buildings are pretty old to me. I think they predated Erdogan. They look like they were built in the 80s from the style. So I don't think, even if they are poor regulations, I don't think you can blame it on Erdogan, because these buildings have been around for a long time. Erdogan is saying this is the largest calamity ever. Now, why would the West be angry with Turkey? Now, let's go back to what I said in the book. Okay, I said predictions. Turkey pivots towards Russia, maybe leaving NATO or distancing itself from NATO's aims. And even if Turkey doesn't side with Russia, it would remain neutral. I said better relationships with Erdogan and Putin. Turkey becoming a significant world power and leader in the Arab and Muslim world. And Turkey may be moving closer to BRICS. I'll come back to what I said about the EU. I said it may be possible Turkey rejects the EU totally. I also mentioned that the Bosphorus Straits and the Montreux Convention that governs the Bosphorus Straits would become a bone of contention, because Turkey would limit the use of the Bosphorus Straits to certain people, which we can see is actually happening. And there you go. I predicted Turkey leaving the Montreux Convention, a major incident or furore over the Bosphorus Straits as a strategic tool in the NATO-backed Ukraine-Russia conflict. Maybe Turkey closes it to allies. And they have. They literally have. Turkey develops nuclear weapons. Turkey looks to exploit the Black Sea natural gas. Okay. And there's also a rapprochement going on between Turkey and Syria with Assad. Right. So Turkey have got a stronger alliance with Russia, which is not pleasing NATO. Okay, Turkey bought a whole Turkey bought the S-400 Russian air defense system rather than buying the American Patriot system, so America weren't happy. It was a $2.5 billion deal, which went to Russia. The S-400 is apparently more sophisticated, more targeted than Patriot, and this is a big risk to the F-35 planes. There have been sanctions on Turkey due to this. There was also a currency manipulation to devalue Turkey's currency as a payback for them buying the Russian air defense system. Turkey has already closed the Bosphorus Straits to US warships. So Turkey's not allowing anyone through the Bosphorus Straits, which is kind of old Constantinople, just away, or across the way from Greece, unless they have a Black Sea port. And this has meant that Russian warships could not enter the Black Sea and help the efforts in Ukraine. So that's a big deal what Turkey's doing there. So Turkey is kind of de facto no longer part of NATO, is it? De jure it is, de facto it isn't. Turkey's having a rapprochement with Syria, yes. Turkey seems like it may drop out of NATO totally, which is a serious problem for Israel and also for NATO because Turkey has the second biggest army. Another thing is, a week before the earthquake, Turkey vetoed Sweden joining NATO, and that's a big blow because Sweden are apparently armed to the teeth, which you wouldn't expect, would you? Okay, now apparently when there was this earthquake in 1988 in Armenia, there were a couple of hints that something was going on there. The top brass fled the country before the earthquake, the military were removed, high-ranking officials were removed. Shevardnadze, who was the kind of president then, Shevardnadze, I think his daughters now with, or granddaughters with RT, he said it was suspect, and the Soviets had deployed crowd control systems for a natural disaster in the days before, so they were obviously expecting something. Okay, so it seems that Turkey and maybe even France could fully defect from NATO, and in my book I've got a prediction for NATO which I said it would fall apart and it would only end up being maybe UK, Poland, USA, with lots of countries falling out. So that's another one of my predictions there. And Saudi Arabia, who's also close to Turkey again and getting closer to China, well, they're all kind of looking to China, aren't they? Now, Assad has apparently already said that these, which affected Syria as well, these earthquakes, he said it's an act of terror. And do you note there's been no attempt to help Syria? I mean, usually when something happens in the world, everyone's sending aid and whatever. And this time, very little of that. You know, when they had the Armenia earthquake, it was a big to-do and they had concerts and basically not very much is being sent to help Syria and Turkey. And always we know the USA is determined to destroy Assad and Syria. And this would go in that vein, wouldn't it? I said again, it's an unusual place for earthquakes to happen. There's the motive, there's the means, there's the technology. Why not, huh? Okay, we mentioned about Turkey rejecting Sweden. Now, Turkey is also not happy and blocked Sweden from joining NATO because Sweden supports the PKK, which is like a Kurdish communist feminist resistance movement who are heavily communist and who are the arch enemies of the Turks, the PKK. If you watch that French program Spiral or Engrenage, there was once a plot where they had people in France from the PKK. So it's known as quite a problematic organization, okay. Sweden has, like, you know, huge influence in the Baltic as well. So it would have been really helpful to have Sweden armed to the teeth, being able to control trade going through the Baltic because it's another way to attack Russia. Okay. Peace with Syria would have been an electoral coup for Erdogan, really, really important. And what we see now is this whole Eurasian alliance building, and Syria is the linchpin to that. Plus, the rebuilding of Syria, in which Turkey can become involved, would be a massive investment opportunity for Turkey. So that's why Erdogan would want this rapprochement with Turkey. So despite what everyone hears in the West, America are really running out of allies, especially in this region. That's why it does make logical sense that there's certainly a motive for them to do something to get rid of Erdogan. And as you saw in my prediction, I talked about a possible assassination or coup attempt, but they could do it this way, simply by damaging his credibility in the eyes of the voters. And of course, the media are kind of running with it as well, and also going hell for tilt in demonizing Erdogan. So, just to go back to earthquakes, the US has been inducing earthquakes in the South Pacific for many, many years. And there was even when the troops were in Afghanistan, Uzbekistan was complaining that they were creating earthquakes in that particular region. So, the Turkish election is on the 14th of May. So they've kind of got to get jacked up and organised in those earthquake-hit regions before then to ensure that Erdogan gains all those seats in what is quite a stronghold for him. And he's not doing particularly well. And as I've said, these natural disasters apparently aren't very good for incumbents in these kind of situations. But for America, they'd far rather have like a stooge in there rather than Erdogan, wouldn't they? And there's already a kind of liberal Turkish set of people educated in America and in Britain who are kind of World Economic Forum type people, and they're ready to go, right? They've got their campaigns ready to go. And as I said again, the military doesn't like the religious nationalism of Erdogan. They're much more keen on this kind of secular, progressive World Economic Forum kind of thing. So you can just tell which way it's going. I'm just going to look at my notes, see if there was anything else important to say about Turkey. Okay. Yes, or apparently this PKK, this Kurdish movement that I was telling you about, is a terrorist, communist, feminist outfit. Can you just imagine that combination? I mean, anything goes, doesn't it? As I say, they were kind of saying Erdogan's involved in all this crony capitalism, hence the poor building regulations. It's why they all flattened like a pancake, which I said doesn't make sense. You can see those old style buildings. Plus, there's an economic downturn in Turkey at the moment, like in most of the world, which it's very hard for Erdogan to win this election as it is. So you can see this earthquake is just piling on the Aggie for Erdogan. Do you note how suddenly everyone in the world is an expert in Turkish affairs and Turkish building regulations? It's almost like they were primed and ready to go with all this information. There was also something going around on Twitter about diplomatic staff being withdrawn the week before, which I'm not quite sure is true, but it certainly seems possible. Although, wouldn't the diplomatic staff be in Ankara? They wouldn't have been affected anyway. So I'm not sure if that is particularly relevant. That could actually be a little bit of a red herring. Okay, a lot of people obviously talking about HAARP being able to generate these low frequency, ultra low frequencies and cause this sort of thing. So we know that, there's been weather modification for many, many years, and there was actually a document in the American military called AF 2025 in which they talked about owning the weather in 2025. So weather control has been a key part of military strategy for a long, long time. So it doesn't really seem like a big stretch when you look at this whole thing and cui bono to think that this could have been an orchestrated earthquake. It's another little coincidence that plays so conveniently into the hands of the warmongers and the global elite. And exactly what I was saying, just to recap, another thing I said in my book about Turkey, I mentioned the Bosphorus Straits, I mentioned the earthquake and the coup attempt. I also said that in every year when there's been similar transits, Turkey moved towards joining the EU. There was always a big step towards joining the EU. And those sort of repeat this year, although I can't see Turkey particularly wanting to join the EU. Maybe this is the year they turn their back on the EU and look east towards the BRICS, Shanghai Corporation, already Argentina and Saudi wanting to join BRICS. So it's the power balance is shifting. Hope you enjoyed that, guys, and I'm sure there'll be some more to come, but I wanted to bring you that one while it's still kind of fresh in terms of the news. Ties in beautifully with all my stuff in the book, and if you haven't got a copy yet, remember, here we go. I don't know if it's got the front page on here, if I can show you. Do grab a copy. There you go. It's in paperback, Kindle, very reasonably priced. I know some people don't like to use Amazon, but don't worry, because 70% of the profit on the Kindle comes to me, so it's not all bad. Okay, I hope you have a great week. Love to everybody.